إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا ونبينا مولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا مولانا محمد صلاة دائمة مقبولة تعد بها أن حقه العظيم نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وكونوا مع الصادقين صدق الله مولانا العظيم وبلغنا رسوله النبي الأمين المكين الكريم ونحن على ذلك لمن الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين خوف اعظم من بے سر و ساما مدد قبلایتی مدد کعبہ ایما مدد قادریم نعرائے یا خوف اعظم میزنن درد شیخ احمد رضا خان قطب عالم میزنن سیدی یا مرشدی شاہ مصطفیٰ زندہ باد مسلک سرکار اعلیٰ اعلیٰ حضرت زندہ باد یا الہی مسلک احمد رضا خان زندہ باد حفظ ناموں سے رسالت کا جو ذمہ دار ہے سیدی یا مرشدی شاہ مصطفیٰ زندہ باد حامل فیض رضا مصطفیٰ امدادکم صلی اللہ علیہ النبی وآلہ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم صلاۃ و سلام علیک یا سیدی یا سندی یا حبیبی یا طبیبی یا رسول اللہ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم وعلی آلک واصحابک یا رحمۃ للعالمین. All praise due to Almighty Allah. Darud and salams upon the most perfect, exalted and glorified of Allah's creation, Sayyiduna wa Mawlana Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. His blessings and salutations upon the Anbiya Ikram, Ahl Bayt Athhar, Sahaba Ikram, Khulafa Rashidin, Tabain, Tabi Tabain, Aimai Mujtahideen, Awliya Kamilin, and all those who follow the path until the last day. We thank Almighty Allah through His infinite mercy and through the wasilah of the beloved Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam for blessing us with the opportunity to congregate for JUMMAH and to prostrate His most exalted Quran. Before continuing, let us all direct our hearts, our thoughts and our minds towards the holy and the sanctified court of the beloved Rasul sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, and in doing so let us collectively recite the Sharif. اللهم صل على سيدنا ونبينا مولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا مولانا محمد طب القلوب ودوائها ونور الأبصار وضيائها وآله وصحبه وبارك وسلم عليه. Allah Almighty, by His divine grace and His mercy, has populated this entire universe, this entire dunya, with people from the east to the west. And every single atom that is in the universe is there because Allah created it. Every speck, every drop, every particle that is on this earth is a creation of Allah. So everything that you see is a creation of Allah. Even when man invents something, he cannot do it without the will of Allah. Okay? So everything in this alam, Allah created. Every speck, every atom, every particle, every drop, every zarra is created by Almighty Allah. But those specks, those particles of dust, those specks, when upon it the rays of the sun falls, then the speck starts to glow. Even a speck starts to glow. Especially those in the servants of Allah who regarded themselves as being mere specks, particles. When Allah's mercy showered upon their hearts, then their hearts became lamps of radiance. Their hearts became
lamps of radiance, lamps of guidance. And last week I talked to you about some of these blessed personalities, and I gave you examples from the life of HAZRAT Sayyidina Mahbub Ilahi Nizamuddin Awliya radiallahu anhu. And these pious servants have always taught us that which is the command of the Quran. They have always taught us that keep the company of the righteous. That is the Quran, the command of the Quran. Almost every Friday I read the same ayah. وَكُونُوا مَعَ الصَّادِقِينَ. Why are we doing this? Because the time has come when people seek a path other than the righteous one. People are seeking a path other than the righteous one. A path that is not the path of the pious. Because why? They feel more comfortable there. Because they may do whatever they wish to do. But yet they have forgotten, Muslims have forgotten, that this dunya is a prison unto the believer. This dunya is a prison unto the believer. Dunya says, mu'min wa jannatul kafir. This dunya is a prison unto the believer, and it is a paradise for the unbeliever. We are bound in this dunya by rules. We are bound by conditions. Allah has put this upon us so that we do not think that we are living a completely free life to do as we will when we will. You may do as you wish when you wish, but you do it within the commands of Almighty Allah. And always you have noticed that those who have kept the company of the pious and remained in the shade of the pious, as the days became more and the time neared them for them to leave the dunya, the people counted them amongst the pious. Why? Because of the asar of that sohbat. The sohbah was very important. And I must tell you today, the discussion that we want to have, this discussion is for you, but take it home today. Very important, take it home today. There is this concept that piety is only for men. Only men must read extra nafil namaz. Only men must wake up in the night and read tahajjud salah. And they must only keep the pious company. No. Like this command is for the males, it is for the females also. Because when a female becomes pious, then the entire house finds that there's an atmosphere of ruhaniyat in it. The entire house is filled with an atmosphere of ruhaniyat and blessings. Let me tell you, the mother of Sarkar-e Ghaus-e Azam radiallahu anhu became like that because she remained in the shade of her pious father. Sarkar-e Ghaus-e Azam radiallahu anhu's mother was that woman regarding whom what was said by her father that I have a daughter who cannot see. I have a daughter who cannot move. She cannot walk. She cannot hear. When Ghaus-e Azam radiallahu anhu entered, when Ghaus-e Azam's father entered to marry her, after the nikah, when he entered the room, he said, who is this strange woman? She is so beautiful. She can see, she can hear, she can stand, she can move. He ran out of the room. Probably I came into the wrong place. And the father of Hazrat Ghaus-e Azam radiallahu anhu's Nana, his grandfather, what did he say? He said, that is the girl that I was talking about. I said she's blind, for she's not placed her eye on a ghair mahram. I said she does not walk because she has not taken a foot, a single step against the command of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How did that woman attain that piety? How did she reach that level of taqwa? Because of remaining under the shade of a pious father. Women need to understand as well as men that you too can spiritually prosper. But if you are married, you will prosper under the shade of your pious husband. If you are in the home of your father, you will prosper under the shade of your mother and father. Not thinking that leave your home and go out and think you're going to prosper in ruhaniyat. Ye hone wala nahi. Learn from those women that have reached these levels of piety. Look at their lives. Look at the mothers that they became. Those who didn't marry because of the state of their ruhaniyat. Look at the levels that they reached in the court of Almighty Allah's nearness. I'm going to give you some examples. One that everybody knows. Hazrat Sayyidatuna Rabia Adawiyya Basariya radiyallahu anha. Hazrat Sayyidatuna Rabia Basariya Adawiya, who doesn't know? Who hasn't heard the name of Hazrat Rabia Basariya? Once, the khadima, the female servant in the house, who was also a devotee in that house. The female servant of Hazrat Rabia Basariya radiallahu anha, she says that Rabia Adawiya radiallahu anha would perform namaz for the entire night. I want you to listen carefully. Hazrat Rabia Basariya Adawiya radiallahu anha would perform salah for the entire night until the start of Fajr. The entire night from Isha, continuously standing in ibadah. Right until Fajr started. The Khadima says that when the time would come for the first light near Fajr, then she would lay down. You know where she would lay down? On her musalla. She would lay down on her musalla. For a very short while she would fall asleep. But then she would wake up from that short nap in a state of shock. In anxiety she would wake up. And she would wake up and she would say to herself, "Oh nafs, oh my desire, for how long will you remain asleep?" Allahu Akbar, she has just made ibadat for the entire night. For those of us that sleep through our Fajr Salah without need, without reason. For those who don't even think of waking up for their Fajr Salah, think about Hazrat Rabia Basriya's ibadat. Her entire night is in the ibadat of Allah. She's standing in the court of Allah making ibadat. And when the time of Fajr appears, she rests for a little while on the zameen, on her musalla. And then when she wakes up in a state of spiritual ecstasy, shock. And she's talking to her nafs, to her inner selves. She's saying, "For how long will you remain asleep and not wake up for Allah's ibadat?" She's just made ibadat the whole night. For how long will you remain asleep and not wake up for Allah's ibadat? She then says, "Oh my nafs, that time is near when you will fall into such a deep sleep that you will only be awakened by the sound of sur for the announcement of Qiyamah." Soon that time will come. Look at what they thought about. When we sleep, what do we think about? Yes, think about it. The entire night she's in ibadah. Short space of time that she fell off to sleep for, to give the body the rest that is needed. And then she gets up and says, says to her nafs, "What have you been doing sleeping for so long?" The Khadima says about Hazrat Rabia Basriya radiallahu anha, that she remained in this state, in this deep spiritual state. And this was her habit. This was her ritual, her manner, her routine. Every single night until she breathed her last breath. Her whole life she did this. She says, when the time of Rabia Basriya radiallahu anha to journey from this dunya drew near, when the time for Wisal drew near, she called me. The Khadima says Rabia Basriya called me. And she showed me one of the cloak, the robe that she used to wear. And said to me, "After I pass away, use this as my kafan. Use this as my kafan. And don't tell anybody about my passing away. Use this as my kafan, but don't inform anybody that Rabia has passed away." The Khadima says that the cloak, the mantle that she gave me, and she pointed out to me, I remembered very well, was the one that she used every night when she performed ibadat. Every night when she used to make this tahajjud in the ibadat, the night salah in the ibadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, she would wear it. The Khadima says, when Rabia Basriya passed away, I used that as a kafan. And I used a woolen stole, a woolen orni over her head. And she says, after she was buried that same night, I saw Rabia Basriya in my dream. The same night, I saw Rabia Basriya in my dream. I saw her, but this time she's dressed in a green velvety cloak. Not that one that I put for her. She's dressed in a green velvet-like cloak. and she has a beautiful orni, a beautiful head covering of silk in a green color. She says, I looked at her and I said to her, Rabia, what has happened to your cloak that I put for you? What has happened to that head covering that you wore? Where did you get this green beautiful libas from, with a beautiful head covering? Rabia Basriya radiallahu anha responded to her and said, the cloak and stole of mine has been kept in the heights of the heavens. Allahu Akbar. The libas of Rabia Basriya has been kept in the heights of heavens, so that I may be rewarded for it on the day of Qiyamah. That clothes that a person wears in ibadat, you will be rewarded for that clothes because you stood in the ibadat of Almighty Allah. She said, I will be rewarded for it on the day of Qiyamah, so that libas of mine has been kept in the heights of the heavens. And in place of that which has now been kept in the heights of the heavens, Almighty Allah bless me with this libas that you are seeing. Allah gave me this Jannati libas. The Khadima then asked in the dream, she said, oh Rabia, did you make so much of ibadat in your life for this beautiful libas of Jannat that you got? Is this why you made so much of ibadat? Hazrat Rabia Basriya's answer says, is this why you made so much ibadat? Hazrat Rabia Basriya radiallahu anha says, Almighty Allah has blessed His awliya with such blessings that this is nothing in comparison to it. This is nothing in comparison to it. Those are the beloveds of Allah. Why should we attach to them? She said, I asked in the dream that, bless me with such advice like you used to do in your lifetime. Even now in the dream you have come to me, give me advice that will take me near to Almighty Allah, that will give me closeness in the court of Allah. Hazrat Rabia Basriya's advice, all of us, and to the women especially, Hazrat Rabia Basriya's advice, make the dhikr of Allah in abundance. Make dhikrullah. She said, make the dhikr of Allah in abundance. Soon you will receive comfort and happiness due to it in your qabr. That dhikr will be your sukoon in your grave. It will be your rahat in your grave. Think for a moment. Think for a moment. How do we allow our women to live their lives? How many men today allow their wives to dress like the kuffar and walk on the streets? How many of us remind our families and our wives and our sisters and our daughters, get on the musalla and perform salah? Today we join them in their fitna and in their guna, and not realizing that on the day of Qiyamah that will become a strife for us. It will be a distraction for us. The pious women, when they lived their lives of piety, they lived it such so that they may illuminate the lives of those that come after them. Hazrat Sayyidatuna Amra, very pious personality, the wife of Hazrat Sayyiduna Habib al-Ajami. Hazrat Sayyidatuna Amra radiallahu anha was the wife of Sayyidina Habib al-Ajami radiallahu ta'ala anhu. It was her routine. Hazrat Habib Ajami himself, such a great personality. But he says it was the routine of my wife Amra that at night when I was asleep, she would come and wake me up. When I was asleep, she would wake me up and she would say, I want you to pay attention to what she says. What Hazrat Amra says. It's said in the form of a riddle, but listen. He says, Habib al-Ajami says, she used to wake me up and she used to say, wake up, the night is passing us by. Wake up, the night is passing us by. The journey is very long and we barely have any provisions. The night is passing us by. The journey is very long and we barely have any provisions for this journey. The caravan of the pious has already gone far ahead. We are the only ones remaining behind. Allahu Akbar. If we have a discourse on this, it will be ours, on just this statement. What is she talking about? She wakes him up in the middle of the night and says, wake up, the night is passing us by, the journey is very long. We barely have provisions. These are pious, these are awliya. We have hardly anything. Others have gone far ahead of us. We are only lagging behind. What was she talking about the night? She was talking about life. The journey was the journey to the hereafter. The provisions are amal salihah, good deeds. She's saying that think of yourself. Never think what she's teaching you. Never think that you have more good deeds than anybody else. Because if you do that, you will not perform more good deeds. Don't think you make more ibadat than anybody else. Because then you will not make more ibadat in your life. Think that I'm the one lagging right at the back. Then you will not waste your nights sitting on social media. You will not waste your nights sitting and watching movies. You will not waste your night in guna and going out and telling your children go out and have fun. You will tell them also, go to bed or stand on the musalla in the ibadat of Almighty Allah. And if your eyes open at night, even if your eyes open at night to go to the bathroom, when your eyes open at night to go to the bathroom, is a beautiful method at times like this. Go and make wudu and make 2 rakats before you go back in the bed. Make wudu and make 2 rakats before you go back in your bed. You have got the sawab of tahajjud salah. How many people wake up in the night, but how many of us do it? Something to think about. There was a pious servant of Allah. Allahu Akbar. Today the dunya has changed. People have changed. What happens? What is the manner today? Because we're talking about women and we're seeing this happening and we're hearing about it. The dunya, a woman when she's in a house, she doesn't care about herself. But when she goes out to the dunya, she beautifies herself. Yet it is opposite. You should beautify yourself in the house of your husband. And you should cover yourself when you are outside. A pious servant of Almighty Allah says, I made nikah to a woman. And it was her routine that after Isha Salah, he says, I married this woman. And it was her routine that after she read her Isha Salah, she would dress up in the most attractive garb. After she read her Isha Salah, she would dress up in the most attractive garb and she would use the most beautiful fragrance. And then she would approach me and say to me, can I serve you in any way, O my husband? He said, if I answered in the positive, she would spend the night beside me. And if I answered in the negative, she would remove those clothing and put on humble clothes and stand in the court of Allah making ibadat until Fajr Salah. What she's teaching you also. What did the pious woman teach you? That your nawafil even before you perform. Before you perform that, even make sure that you have the pleasure of your husband. Subhanallah. If we learn from the lives of these pious, how much barakat we'll have in our lives. I'm going to end with one discussion very quickly for today. These women, the true and pious women, their lives were for the pleasure of Allah. Like we spoke about the men last week. The women also have spent their lives. The pious women have spent their lives for the pleasure of Allah. The family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the female companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they sacrificed their lives even for the pleasure of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Go back to the history of Karbala. Let's end with this today. Go back to the history of Karbala, when the distressed caravan of the captives of the Ahl Bayt reached Kufa. Out of shame and in a state of fear, Ibn Sa'ad, the person who was taking them towards Kufa on the command of Ibn Ziyad, he asked everybody to camp in the jungle. He was ashamed because of what was happening. On that night, it is reported in the dead silence and still of that night, HAZRAT Sayyidatuna Zainab radiallahu anha, HAZRAT Zainab, the daughter of Sayyidatuna Fatima Zahra radiallahu anha. Remember, this is a time when her brother has been martyred. Imam Hussein and the Ahl Bayt were martyred on the plains of Karbala. Their helpers were martyred. They have been treated with total disrespect. Their caravans have been pillaged and plundered. And they are now in the jungle, about to enter Kufa. Hazrat Sayyidatuna Zainab radiallahu anha, what is she doing? When they stop and pitch their tents there, when enemies do that, while taking them captive, what did she do? She was spending her night in the ibadat of Allah, even in that difficult time. Nowadays we have this big bimari and disease. When you're going through some difficulty, you say, I can't even think, that's why I don't read namaz. La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. That is when you're supposed to be on ibadat more, when you're going through calamity and difficulty. Shaitan is playing us. Look at what Hazrat Zainab had just faced on the plains of Karbala. But look at her condition, she's in invocation. She's supplicating in the court of Almighty Allah. While Sayyidatuna Zainab, the daughter of Fatima Zahra radiallahu anha, is supplicating and making dua. She hears, I want you to listen to this narration with your heart. She hears a gentle voice reaching her ears. And the voice is saying, "Oh noble lady, may I present myself before you?" Oh, she don't know who this lady is. She heard that the family of Rasulullah is going through some difficult time. This old, frail woman. "Oh noble lady, may I present myself before you?" When Sayyidatuna Zainab radiallahu anha raised her eyes, she saw an old, frail woman, covered in a chadar over her head, her face covered, standing respectfully before her. When she received permission, she falls at the feet of Sayyidatuna Zainab radiallahu anha. She doesn't know who she is. She knows it's a family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They have been ill-treated by the Yazidi army. But she falls at her feet respectfully. And she says in a gentle voice, "I am a needy and destitute woman, but today I have brought a little food and water to present in the court of the famished Ahlul Bayt." Allahu Akbar. This is a woman. This is a pious woman. Old women like that. But look at her taqwa and her love for the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The old woman then says, "Oh noble lady," she doesn't know who she's talking to, "I am no stranger. There was a time when I was blessed with the honor of serving in the home of Fatima Zahra radiallahu anha. There was a time when I was blessed with serving in the home of Sayyidatuna Fatima Zahra radiallahu anha. And during that time, in the lap of Fatima was a little baby called Zainab." Allahu Akbar. She doesn't know this is the person I'm talking to. There was a lady called Zainab, a baby called Zainab. When Hazrat Zainab radiallahu anha heard this, she could not contain her emotion anymore. She burst into tears, overwhelmed by her state of emotion. And she said, "You have come here in the wilderness, in a foreign land, to serve the oppressed ones and to share your hospitality with us. Our du'as are with you. May Allah bless you with happiness and bliss in both the dunya." When this lady heard these words, she queried, "Who are you?" And it was said that the same one who you saw in the lap of Fatima Zahra. This is the person. It is Zainab. When she heard that, she embraces Hazrat Sayyidatuna Zainab. And as she embraces her, she slips to the ground, falls at her feet, and her ruh leaves her body. Her ruh leaves her body in this state. This is the state of piety. That if you keep the company and you go out seeking the pious servants of Allah, Allah will give you more in the qadam or in the nisbat and the connection. This is something we have to think about. It's time to change our community. It is time for us to realize the importance of taqwa, the importance of zuhud, the importance of abstinence, staying away from the wrong things, doing what Allah has commanded. If we do this, and especially if this happens in our homes with the women folk, it will create an environment of spiritualism, an environment of taqwa. Learn from them. As men, we too learn from them. Learn from Rabia Qasdiya. Learn from the wife of Hazrat Sayyidina Habib Ajami. Learn from all the other pious women that we talked about. Inshallah, I want to continue this discussion next week. Allah willing. I want to continue this discussion on the pious women of Islam. Inshallah, next week as well. And remember, we are ending the month of Sarkar-e Ghaus-e Azam. Remember, the mother of Ghaus-e Azam radiallahu anhu was the most important pillar in the life of Sarkar-e Ghaus-e Pak radiallahu anhu. Abdul Qadir became Abdul Qadir through the dua of his mother, through the nurturing of that mother. Allah give us tawfiq-e-khair. May Allah bless us to live with Iman. And when the time comes to leave this world, we will leave with Iman. Those who are ill, Allah grant them shifa, come and set the al. Those that are passed on, Allah subhanahu exalt them in Jannat al-Na'im. Those that are going through any parishani, difficulty, Allah have mercy on them, especially the Sunni Muslims and Muslims of Palestine. May Allah have mercy upon them, that the devastating situation that is unfolding and becoming worse as the minutes go. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on them, and may Allah give us a tawfiq to continuously make dua for them. Wa ma'alil balagh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.